So Henry Flagler contacted his cousin Thomas Hastings to create a farm which would provide food for the Ponce de Leon Hotel. The farm first emerged in 1890, right here, 15 miles southwest of St. Augustine. It was called Prairie Garden.
A lot of land between St. Augustine and Hastings is formerly wetlands.
Robin Moore is the coordinator of archaeology and historic resources for St. Johns County. He says Hastings was likely chosen because it wasn't a wetland area. In fact, the land is said to be perfect because it is so level.
So that was really the first flatland you come to outside of St. Augustine. Hastings itself, that natural quality of having the low flatlands and productive soils and that type of thing was a naturally good area to do it.
Prairie Garden consisted of more than 1,500 acres, where Hastings built a house for his family and small cabins for his 50 employees. Hastings also built a large greenhouse with winter heating in order to grow year-round produce for the fine tables of Henry Flagler's hotel.
The folks in Hastings, and as well as the hotel, lived off each other.
Historian Robert Naraki says Flagler saw Hastings as a money-making opportunity beyond his own hotels.
But you have to remember, Henry Flagler was a businessman, and it must have pained him to see the trains that were bringing people down to St. Augustine go back empty at the end of each day.
Flagler realized he could ship produce north, creating more demand for his railroad.
He wanted to make a cash avenue for the railways for exporting up to available markets in the Northeast.
Try to get a really beautiful tomato in the middle of winter in Buffalo. Never going to happen.
But the nearest depot to Prairie Garden was in a nearby town called Merrifield. It was said some of the farm workers stole Merrifield's depot, moved it over to Prairie Garden, and put up a sign calling it Hastings. That's how the town of Hastings was born. By 1891, Hastings had its own post office. Hastings was a bustling community, farming and shipping everything from cabbage, tomatoes, eggplant, and cauliflower, to citrus, rice, hay, and cotton. But within 4 years after the town was founded, Hastings was hit with a major disaster. Cold fronts caused the freeze of 1895.
The nighttime sounds that came from the grove as the temperatures continued to lower, it sounded, he said, like warfare, like gunshot. What was happening was the sap in the trees was at the very top. It had not been cold a single time.
Bill Cotton worked for one of the first companies that grew produce shipped by rail. He says this company barely survived the freeze. When the trees lost all their leaves, it looked like they were destroyed. But workers figured out a way to save them.
They cut the dead trees off at the ground. If they cut them off above the bud union determined what variety of fruit was. If they did it, they cut above the bud union, sprouts came out, and the grove came back. He said we need to give our forefathers credit for knowing how to bring a tree back that had been killed almost to the ground.
The freeze did not stop the town for long.
Naturally went for a crop that wasn't going to be so easily destroyed flat out the next time, and potatoes seemed to be the one that would survive the best in these freezing temperatures and grew easiest as a cash crop. So they just started growing more and more of those over time.
Irish potatoes had become a big moneymaker. And by 1909, the farms of Hastings produced $1 million in various crops, primarily Irish potatoes.
For a long time, the prime markets were Boston, and then New York City, and later Philadelphia, and finally anywhere east of the Mississippi plus eastern Canada.
In 1917, the price of potatoes soared astronomically, and everyone got rich. It's said that some of the people in Hastings were now as wealthy as the guests at the hotels of St. Augustine.
Pictures from there, from the turn of the century all the way up to the 1930s, show two-story structures, big hotels. It was happening places.
Hastings soon became the potato capital of Florida, and because of the great wealth it brought, it was said Hastings turned potatoes into gold.